Okay, good morning. Today's daf is daf kuf of Ketubot. Let me share my screen and we will get started. So we ended yesterday with at the Gemara and with the end of the Gemara on the bottom of Tzadik Tet Amabet. So we are up to the Mishnah, and we have been discussing potential problems when a widow sells assets of her husband's estate to pay for her ketubah. So we had issues of maybe she would get too much money, maybe she would get too little money, who was responsible for that, what happened, when should the sale be void. Those were all the issues that we dealt with over the last few days. Today we turn to problems that occur when the court sells the property, as we begin with the Mishnah again near the bottom of Tzadik Tet Amabet. So Shum Hadayanim, if we have a situation where the judges have appraised the value of the property, Shepichaso Shasus, and then if they undervalued it by a 6, Hosifu Shasus, or they overvalued by a 6, meaning when they eventually sell it, they didn't get exactly what they expected. So then Michran Batel, but not only did they not, but it was a difference of more than a 6, meaning more than what we would call Ona. Now, as a reminder, Ona does not generally apply to real estate, to real property. It only applies to metaltalin. But here we are applying it nonetheless, it seems, because of the responsibility that the judges have. So, hello, good morning. So we're in the middle of a case, Mark. So the case is that the court is supposed to sell some property, and they sold it either for more than they expected or for less than they expected. And if they get a different value, so then the sale is going to be void. It's going to be nullified. We're not going to treat the sale. That is the Tanakama position. That is the position of the Chachamim. But Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, Machran Kayam, it's a good sale because Imkain Makoach based in Yafeh. We should certainly have that the authority of the court is worth something. And so if we don't allow, if they have the same Ona rules as everybody else, then what's the power of the court? So Aval Im Asu, however, when it comes to Im Asu Igeris Bekoris Beinehen, if the court does a letter of inspection among them, and Rashi explains Igeris Bekoris Hachuraza, the Lashon Bekures Shemivakrinosa, that they do some checking. B'nei Adam al Yedei Achraza, or that the people do the checking through the announcement. So what happens is the court announces that they're going to sell the property, and then as a result, the people come and check it out. And so because of the announcement, well, then in that situation, even if there's a 100% difference, meaning they valued it as 100 and it ended up selling for 200, or it was a difference in the opposite direction where they valued it at 200 but it ended up being sold for 100, machran kayam. In that situation, the sale is valid. So we see that in the first situation, it seems like we're talking about without any kind of announcement. And then in the second situation, we're talking about where there was an announcement. So now the Gemara is going to ask, what's the story? We've now categorized two different situations. One is the widow herself doing the sale, and the second is the court doing the sale. Well, there's a third possibility of who could do the sale, and that is Ibailahu Shliach Kaman. Who do we say that a shliach is like? Is a shliach considered like the court, or is the shliach considered like the widow? Now it's interesting. Rashi here basically says we're talking about a regular shliach, just any stam guy. But Tosfos is like, I don't understand. What's why would you ever think that a shliach should be better than the widow? And so as a result, Tosfos is saying that it actually is specifically a shliach of Beis Din, and that's what we're saying. So do we give the shliach of Beis Din essentially the characteristics of Beis Din, or do we only give him just like an individual? So let's take a look and see as we turn to the top of Kuf Amud Aleph. So in a second. Okay, so Rava Amar Rav Nachman Shliach Kedayanin. So Rava says no, the Shliach is like judges, and we'll get the reason in a moment. Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna Amar Rav Nachman. However, Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna said in the name of Rav Nachman. So they're both arguing about what Rav Nachman said. Kalmana, no, it's like the widow. So Rava Amar Rav Nachman Shliach Kedayanin Madayanin Lav Ladidhu Af Shliach Nami Lav Ladidei. Right. So just as the court is not trying to sell it for itself, they're selling it on behalf of somebody else. So too, the shliach is selling on behalf of somebody else. So we're going to treat them together like each other. But and we differentiate the widow who's selling for herself. And Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna Amar Rav Nachman Ke'almana. Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna says that we treat the agent like the shliach like an almana, because ma almana yechida, just as she is by herself, meaning she's acting on her own. Av shliach yachid. So too is the individual acting on his own. So he's the agent, but he's acting by himself. La puki based in derabim, which excludes the court and we don't treat him like the court because the court is multiple people. And so as a result, when you have multiple people, so then we have a greater sense of confidence in what you're doing. Okay, so v'hilchas shliach ka'almana, and we say that the shliach is like a widow, meaning that it's we take the view of Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna. Umayshna mehaditnan. And now 1 second, why is it different from the following situation? So again, as we have been going through in connection with much of what we've talked about, we're going to talk about actually we saw this Mishnah already in connection with an agent taking truma, right? So so in this situation, we're saying that an agent who sells is like a widow. And what does that mean? Well, remember, when a widow sells and she's even $1 off, the sale is void. So why, if we're treating an agent like a widow, why do we have the following rule in the following Mishnah? Ha'omer l'shlucho, right? And this was a Mishnah that we saw in Trumos. Ha'omer l'shlucho, if you say to your agent, say utrom, go take truma for me. Torim gedas balabais. The agent is required to take truma the way the owner, the way the principal is sending him to do, would have done on his own. Meaning that if in fact the guy is a stingy guy, he should give 1/60th. And if he is an average guy, he should give 1/50th. And if he's a generous guy, he should give 1/40th. So v'im einu yodea daito shel balabais. And if the agent doesn't know what kind of guy the homeowner is, Torim bevenin is he should use the 1/50th measure, the intermediate measure, echad mechamishin, pichas asara. If he accidentally did 10 too much, i.e., he did 1/40th, hosef asara, or he did 10 too little, and he added 10, meaning that it was 1/60th. So truma. So it's still a valid truma. Well, 1 second. If, in fact, an agent is supposed to be treated like the widow, and the widow can't make a mistake of even $1, how do we allow this agent to make a mistake and have his action be valid? Right? The sale would be invalid if it was off by 10. So why should the truma be valid? So hasab kaven to the torim ba'ayin ra. No, the point is that there, and when it comes to truma, you got people who are stingy. And you got people who are generous. So this is how I estimated you. And the Chassam Sofer makes a nice point on this point and says that the point is that when I appoint Stan to be my shliach, I'm essentially saying I'm appointing Stan to estimate what kind of person I am. And so as a result, because there are a variety of people, that is not considered an error when Stan misestimates me, because he's doing what I asked him to, which is to try. Of al-hacha to usahu. But here, when the person sells the property has a certain value, and now the person made a mistake in terms of selling the property at the proper value. So Amrale lo iboy lach limit, right? As we saw this line before, that the principal can say to the agent, listen, I didn't appoint you to make a mistake. I appointed you to do what I said. So that is the story. So now that we've got that, so now the Gemara now turns to provide a rule regarding the dispute in our Mishnah. So again, in our Mishnah, we had the two views. One was that you could make a mistake up to a 6, and one was that you can make any kind of mistake.
Does the agent receive any remuneration for his action?
It seems like this is irrespective of of whether or not he's getting remuneration. Presumably, he should be getting remuneration, but it certainly isn't contingent on that. What we say, what we seem to say.
Because in our case, the shliach is treated just like the widow, and in this case, the shliach is treated just like the owner. Well, no matter what he takes, it's good truma.
No, but remember, he doesn't get treated. Remember, this Mishnah was brought earlier as the proof that we don't treat the owner and the agent the same, because the agent can only make a mistake of up to 10. If he makes a bigger mistake, it's not a valid truma. An owner, whatever he takes, even if it's accidental, that he takes way too much, if he overestimates, it's still going to be considered a good truma. So, all right. So now let's take a look and see what the halacha is like in terms of a court sale. So Amar of Huna bar Chanina, Amar of Nachman, Hilchasa kedivrei chachamim. The halacha is like the Tanakama, the chachamim, who say that you can only make a mistake of a 6. So the Gemara asks, the Rav Nachman, Makoach based in Yafeh. I don't understand. Rav Shimon ben Yochai, I'm sorry, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, says, gives a great logic. Why doesn't he agree with that logic? So, and indeed, we know that he agrees with that logic, because listen to this story. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. What did Rav Nachman say in the name of Shmuel? Yisomim shabo lachlok b'nichsei avihen. If you have orphans come who are going to divide the assets of their father, based in ma'amidin lahen apotropos. Based in sets up for them a guardian. So Rashi understands this meaning as a guardian for each of them. Tosfos understands that this has got to be, can't be, I think it's Tosfos, says that it can't just be that it's that we wouldn't just divide the assets of of minors just for the heck of it. So it must be that there must be an adult or orphan as well, and he's asking for his share, and now we're pointing of an apotropos to take care of to divide it and among the others. And each of the guardians, so according to Rashi, each of the guardians is choosing for each minor an appropriate portion. Higdilu, when they get older, they, according to Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel, they are able to complain. Okay, they can say, listen, I didn't get the right piece. You didn't do a fair job for me. For Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman himself, again, that was what Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel. But Rav Nachman himself says, Higdilu ein yecholin limchos. You can't. Why? Because imkain makoch based in Yafeh. Because again, he says this exact principle. So how could it be that when Rav Huna is telling us what Rav Nachman said in terms of what the halacha is, that he was saying that the halacha is like the chachamim? The halacha should be like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, because Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is the one who says imkain makoch based in Yafeh. And in fact, that's a principle that Rav Nachman himself believes. So lo kasha. No, we don't have to say that. The fact that in one place Rav Nachman is saying that we say the line, imkain makoch based in Yafeh, and in one place we don't, because hadato in our Mishnah we're talking about a situation where a mistake was made, and that's why he's not going to say. So if in fact no mistake was made, so then we will give the Beis Din sufficient authority. But if they make a mistake, so then they can't just do anything that they want. So hadeloto. Whereas in the situation about the orphans, we say that it's not a mistake. Well, 1 second, if ideloto, but mayachol and limchos, why would we even ever think that they could potentially protest? Beruchos, because you gave them the wrong direction. Meaning, the minor could say, listen, when he grows up, Junior, we'll call him Junior, gets older, and he says, listen, my field is just west of my dad's property, and you gave me the eastern portion of my dad's property. That was ridiculous. Yes, I agree that the value is right, but you should have given me the portion that was next to my piece of field, my piece of land. And so as a result, that's the complaint. And according to Rav Nachman, what we say when we say Makoach Beis Din is that, listen, Beis Din has the right, if they're not being unfair from a monetary perspective, then it is what? You get what you get, and you don't get upset. Exactly. So now Kiyasa Rav Dimi. So now we're going to have 2 stories about Rebbe, and we're going to say, maybe these stories suggest a debate about what the tellers of the story believe in connection with a particular halacha, and then we'll reject that. So in the end, we'll just have 2 interesting stories. So let's hear the story. So Kiyasa Rav Dimi Amar. So when Rav Dimi came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, so he, came to Bavel from Eretz Yisrael. So Masa v'asa Rabbi Kedivrei Chachamim. He said that there was a specific situation where Rebbe came to a conclusion and he ruled like the Chachamim, meaning that there was a mistake that was made and he undid the transaction because it was more than a 6th off. So Amar Lefanav, and so Prata Beno shall Rebbe Elazar ben Prata ben Beno shall Rebbe Prata Hagadol. So Prata, who was the son of Elazar ben Prata, who was the grandson of Rav Prata the Great. So he said in front of Rebbe, listen, Im Kain Makoach Beis Din Yafeh, this line. And then the Hechzer Rebbe Esma Hamasa. And so Rebbe reversed himself and said, you're right, I need to change my ruling. So Rav Dimi Masni Hachi, but Rav Dimi taught it the way I just went over. Rav Safra Masni Hachi, but Rav Safra had a different version of the story. Masa Uvikesh Rebbe La'asos Kedivrei Chachamim. He didn't actually rule like the Chachamim. He only wanted to rule like the Chachamim. He was about to rule like the Chachamim. And when he was about to rule like the Chachamim, Amar Lefanav Prata Beno shel Rebbe Elazar ben Prata, Ben Beno shel Rebbe Prata. You can see that they named after grandfather in this situation. Hagadol Im Kain Makoach Beis Din Yafeh. So exactly the same kind comment. So and as a result, Lo Asa Rebbe Esamasa. So as a result, Rebbe was able to avoid making the mistake in the first place. So now let's ask. Well, the case in front of Rebbe was a Beis Din that had presumably made a mistake. That's the implication of this. Beis Din had made a mistake. It had made a mistake by at least a 6th. And so the question was, are we going to undo this? Are we going to undo this? So Lema B'Hai Kamiflagi. Maybe we could say that Rav Dimi and Rav Safar are arguing about the following. Mar Savar Ta B'Dvar Mishnah Hochozer. Rav Dimi says that if in fact you make a mistake about something that is taught in a Mishnah, then you would go back and reverse yourself, meaning even after you reached your conclusion. Umar Savar Eina Choser, whereas the other one would say, no, don't reverse yourself. So you don't have to say that that's what they're debating about. The Kuliyama Ta B'Dvar Mishnah Choser. Really, everybody agrees that you can reverse yourself. And Umar Savar Haki Havamasa, Umar Savar Haki Havamasa. And you could say that both of them thought that that was in fact what happened, and that they were arguing about a factual context and not a halachic difference. So Amar Rav Yosef. So now that we've got that, we're going to now have Rav Yosef teach rules regarding the sales of property, and the Gemara is going to explain why he needed to bother teaching us these rules. So Amar Rav Yosef, Armalta de Zabina, Achrayas Ayasme. If the Armala, if the widow sells some land, And now it turns out, and Rashi helps us here. Let's say uveidina dezabin achrayas yasme. That so if whether a widow sells the land or Beis Din sells the land, the guarantee is on the orphans. And let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi helps us out here. Achuriyusa ayasme. It says 1, 2, 3, 7 lines up in the Rashi. Im nimtzis hasada gzula. If it turns out that the field that the widow sells or that the Beis Din sells turns out to have been stolen, o mishubedet, or it had a lien on it, la'acher, to somebody else, v'tarfa min lokeach, and gets taken from the lokeach b'chovo as a result of a debt. Choser halokeach al ha-yisomin v'sha'almanash liach shal yisomim haisa. The buyer doesn't go back to the widow. The widow is the one who sold it, but she sold it on behalf of the orphans, and similarly, the Beis Din sold it on behalf of the orphans, and so the guarantee falls on the orphans and not on either the widow or the Beis Din. Now, Pshita, the Gemara says that's all obvious. We don't need to know this. Almana lo itzrachalei. So the Gemara admits, you know what? You're right that we didn't need to teach us about a widow. Because ki itzrachalei bidina, ki itzrachalei beidina. So what do we need it about? We needed about the courts, because why would I have thought that maybe a court would be different? So ma'od tema, I might have thought as we turn to Kufam Abet, called a zavim and beidina, I daitala mepek like kala hu de zavim. Anybody who buys from the court might expect that because the court is going to announce the sale, so the word is going to get out. And so as a result, and Rashi helps us understand the rest of this line, right? So Rashi says, top line on Kuf Hamabet, Lefisha hein mochrin b'hachraza, because the Beis Din sells through an announcement, ubatuach halokeach, and the buyer will be certain, she'ilu haya aleha asikin, that if anybody was trying to had business in connection with that land and had arguments about and wanted to fight about the land, hayu yotzin uma'arin, they would have already come back and complained during the 30-day hachraza period, during the 30-day announcement. Hilkach shelo b'achrayas hu lokeach. And so as a result, he might assume that there is no achrayas whatsoever, that he doesn't get it with a guarantee, but he doesn't have to worry about it either. So as a result, maybe there's no guarantee. So Kamash Malan, not so. Kamash Malan, that in fact it is sold with a guarantee. Okay, so now we go back to our Mishnah. And in our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said even a mistake of greater than 1/6 would not invalidate the sale. So the question is how big a mistake does that mean? Does that mean that you can make an infinite mistake? If the guy sells it for an infinite number of dollars, obviously I know that that's not a real number, but in any event, the point is that is there any limit to that? So va'ad kama, how big a mistake can be made? So Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshis ad palga, basically 50% or double. It's either way. So up to half the value. So Tanya Nami Hachi, and we have a brisa that teaches this similarly. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and this is the key. It's Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel who says this. Based in Shemachu Shavim Masayim b'mana. Oh, Shavim Mana b'Masayim Michran Kayam. That is where the sale is valid, and presumably, if you do $1 more than that, then it would be invalid. So 200 selling a 100 for 201 or a 200 for 99, that would be invalid. Okay, so now the Gemara turns to what happens if the court failed to make the required announcement. So let's take a look and we'll see. And now, and that is going to bring us back to our Mishnah. So Amar Amemar Mishmei de Rav Yosef. So Amemar said in the name of Rav Yosef, which I guess was also no, that was the last. Okay, so based in Shemachro below Hachras. What you have a Beis Din that sells without an announcement. Nasu Kamishato Bidvar Mishnah V'Chosrin. So Amemar wanted to said in the name of Rav Yosef that in fact it's automatically void. That you basically have to go back and they undo the sale. So Nasu, now the Gemara tries to understand the specific language, because it said nasu kamishato, that they make it as if there was an error. Well, 1 second, vadaito, I don't understand. How could you say that you're treating it as if it was an error? It is an error because the Tanan Shuma Yasom and Shloshim Yom. We have a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in our Erechin that says Shuma Yasom and Shloshim Yom. That when we do an appraisal for orphans, we do an appraisal that lasts 30 days, meaning we announce it for a 30-day period. But when you sell hekdesh, that's going to take a 60-day period. And you announce it in the morning and in the evening. Okay, so as a result, it seems pretty clear that when you sell something, you have to announce it. So why wouldn't this be an error that is a Mishnah error that we directly? Why do you say that we're treating it like one? So if I only had that Mishnah, haba amina hanimil shliach, I might have thought that was talking about only where an agent sold it on behalf of the orphan. About based in low, but if the basin sold it itself, maybe not. So Kamash Milan. So that's why Ameimer is teaching us that we treat it as if it's an invalid sale. So Esvei Rav Ashi la Ameimer. So now Rav Ashi asks a really good question to Ameimer. What did we say in our Mishnah? Shum hayadan shapichasu shasus ohosi rishusus. We had in our Mishnah that the judges appraised the value, either overvalued by a 6 or undervalued it by a 6. So makron batel. So I don't understand. Their sale is considered void. Hashava b'shava. If they had, what does that imply? If they hadn't made a mistake by a 6, if they had gotten it right, well then makron kayam. So then their sale would be valid. My lav de lo achruz. Isn't this a case of no announcement? So the Gemara is now going to offer 4 different efforts at proving that, in fact, it is at answering this question. So again, let's make sure we understand the question. The question is that on the one hand, Ameimer says that if there's no hachraza, the transaction is void. And on the other hand, we have in our Mishnah a situation that appears to be no hachraza, and yet if the sale was for a fair value, we say that the transaction is valid.
Why do you think there's no hachraza?
That's we're going to assume right now that is the assumption of the question. You're absolutely right. Our first answer is going to lo b'da'achras. We could say that in fact it was an announced situation. Now we're going to answer your question, James, and actually explain how we know that there couldn't have been an announcement. Because Hamid de Seifa mid achros. But 1 second, you want to try and say that we're talking about a situation where there was an announcement? That can't be, because the latter part of the Mishnah is talking about an announcement. Because Havi Reisha b'delo achros. So the first part needs to be when there was not an announcement. Because what did it say at the end? The Ketani Seifa, at the end of the Mishnah, we learned Im asu igeris b'koris, if you did a letter of inspection. And what was that? Rashi explained that what did it mean by a letter of inspection, and this is clearly where Rashi understood it from, because clearly we're understanding that a letter of inspection implies a hachraza, an announcement. So afilu makro shava b'mana b'matayim, that even if you sold something that was worth 100 for 200, shava masayim b'mana, or something that was estimated at 200 and it was sold for 100, michran kayim, it's a valid sale. So we are stuck. We need to reject the first answer. So we cannot say that the answer is actually our Mishnah is talking about hachraza in the first part of the Mishnah, because again, the end of the Mishnah is clearly talking about hachraza, and the end of the Mishnah is also a statement by the Tanakama, meaning we have Tanakama, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, and then the Tanakama. And so as a result, those two statements are inconsistent. And the difference between them, because one place, if you sell for more than a sixth difference, it's invalid. And in the other place, you could sell even for twice as much and it's still valid. So, and what was the difference? The difference was the letter of announcement. So it's got to be that's the hachraza that we're talking about.
It's definitely not part of Ramashim and Gamliel's.
Definitely not part of Rishon ben Gamliel. It's definitely going back. And that's the method of the Mishnah is often to have the statement and then you go back to the original person who is speaking. Indeed, often when you have a statement, a statement of disagreement at the end of a Mishnah, and you've had two statements, you have to then clarify which part of the Mishnah is the statement disagreeing with, because sometimes the disagreement could go all the way back to the beginning. But here they've made very clear that the disagreement is about the first part of the Mishnah. Okay, so olam b'delo achra. So okay, so now we're going to say three different answers that explain why, three more answers, so 2, 3, and 4 of our all 4 answers, having rejected answer number 1, we're going to explain how it could be that these are not inconsistent. So olam b'delo achros. Really, we're talking about where there was no announcement. Below kashya kan b'dvarim shemachrizin aleihem, kan b'dvarim she'ein machrizin aleihem. There's a difference between certain items are sold with an announcement and certain items are sold without an announcement. And when the item is sold without an announcement, that's what we're talking about in our Mishnah. And so what are the things that are sold without an announcement that explain the first part of our Mishnah? If you have slaves, movable property, or contracts of indebtedness. So you have a check essentially that has not been cashed. So those are the three things. And so now the Gemara asks, Avadim my time my. Why is it that we don't announce Avadim? Shema Yishmu v'yivrachu. Because maybe they'll hear and they'll run away, meaning they don't know who their new owner is going to be. They may have appreciated their current owner, and they particularly probably appreciate the fact that their current owner is dead, and so maybe they're not having to do that much work. So metaltalin. So as a result, we don't want to make a big announcement about it because we're worried that they'll run away. Metaltalin ushtaros. What about movables and notes? Why do we not want to announce them? Because shema yaganvu, maybe they're going to be stolen, and so as a result, we're worried that if we announce it, people are going to come, and when people are there, they're going to see it, and they'll sneak in and take it away. And because what can't you sell? What can't you steal? Effectively, it's very hard to steal land. Meaning, if I set up a piece of land and say we're going to sell this, you can't come in and just say, okay, I'm taking it home with me, right? So there's nothing to worry about that from that perspective. So, okay, so that is answer number 2, and the first of the answers that does not get rejected. Or we could say answer number 3, kan b'shasha machrizin, kan b'shasha ein machrizin. There are different times. Sometimes we do announce at a particular time, and sometimes we don't announce. To Amri Nahardah, because the people in Nahardah explain the following: Lecharga, when you have a head tax, ulamizone, or for the food of the wife of the widow. I realized I forgot to type that one in. Vilikvura, or for burial expenses, mizabninan velo achrazda. Because of the time pressure associated with it, right? I mean, you have the tax collector right in front of you. The orphans are struggling. If we don't pay, then maybe they'll take one of the people into debtor's prison or something. There's big risks if that or for the wife, the widow needs her support. She needs to be able to eat. Or the burial expenses, you can't leave the person unburied. So for all those three things, we won't make an announcement. So when our Mishnah was talking about no announcement and saying that you could make a mistake of up to a 6, that's where no announcement was required because of the specific circumstances. The Ibayasema. So again, answer number 1 was talking about the object itself. Answer number 2 talked about the circumstances. Answer number 3, kan b'makom shemachrizin, kan b'makom she'ein machrizin. So we had there are certain places. So answer number 3 is about the location. There are places where we do announce and places where we don't announce. Well, where don't we announce the Amar Rav Nachman Miolam lo asu igeres bekoris benarda? They never made one of these letters of inspection in Naharda. And why? Savar mina mishum devikie shuma. Right. So some people thought, it was proposed. Is it because they're experts, right? If you were to ask why don't they need to make an announcement, maybe it's because they're expert at appraisals. So Amar lahu Rav Yosef Bar Manyume, Rav Yosef Bar Manyume explained to them, no, that's not it. Rather, l'didim parsha li minei to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman himself told me, mishum dekaru lahu b'nei achle nichse da'achrazda, because they would belittle the people who bought at these auctions. And why would they belittle them? Because at the end of the day, when you buy in a forced sale situation, it's a little sketchy, as they say, right? You don't want to be the one who's taking advantage of some poor orphans who need to sell. And so as a result, they would people would speak ill of the people, but at the same time, you need to have the assets. What? Who
would be speaking ill of the seller?
Of the buyers. They would be speaking ill.
Money for the orphans.
Yeah, I understand, but
these like charity auctions.
I understand. This is Rashi's explanation. So let's take a look, and we can take a look at Rashi about 11, 12 lines down. Yeah, well, it could be. Mishum de lahu. So what does the Rashi say? Ganai, right? V'charfahi lehem. It would be, embarrassing. It would be no, that's okay. Yes, it's a public auction. Kishakonin nechasim shebased in mochrin. That it would be a bad thing for them. It would be for them if they bought something at an announcement. Lafisha machmas dogek shahanoja locates es hayisomim. Right, they're effectively oppressing the orphans.
You're not buying it at a discount.
I know, I understand.
Maybe they are because it's a forced sale.
Well,
That's
yes,
the question.
that's the question.
Is it like 50 cents on the dollar or 70?
Well, I mean, presumably, right? Remember that the Beis Din has to estimate its value.
And that's
So-
the reason it could be embarrassing, because you're attempting to buy it on the cheap. at the
Aha,
US.
it's right, because you can't, because of course the Beis Din, if they make the announcement, then you sell it and you buy it for less. So then you are like a scavenger. So there are certain circumstances where that could be 100%. It could be embarrassing that you're right. So
The cost to raise money, so that all the buyers know that.
exactly. So now instead, so the question is so maybe hopefully as a result, the problem is that, so why don't you have here are the people who are making fun of, why don't we have them come and participate and make sure that the orphans get more than that was valued, and then it would be a great thing. All right, in any event,
The world should be so nice.
yes, it should be so nice. But okay, so that's the story, right? We want people to be nice, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So not easy, not always easy. Okay, so now that we have that, so now we'll do one more piece as we finish up the Gemara to the Mishnah. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Metaltalin Shel Yisomim, when it comes to the movable properties of orphans, Shaminosan Umochronosan La'alter. We appraise them and sell them immediately. And now this is consistent with what we said a few moments ago, that one of the kinds of property that we don't make an announcement about is movable property. So Rav Chisda Amar Avimi Mochronosal L'Shvakim. And Rav Chisda, though, said in the name of Avimi that in fact we wait in order to sell it at the marketplace. So the point is that there are more market days, right? So Rashi tells us. So that when we say la'alter, we say sell it right away as soon as possible after the father dies, because we don't want it to get ruined. But when it comes to Rav Chisda, who says in the name of Avimi, he says, no, let's wait till the Yom Shuk. We'll wait till the market day so that we could get potentially the best price. And so there's a balance that's going on. And now the Gemara answers that in fact, below pligi, really they're not arguing at all. Had mikarav shuka, when Rav Chisda says sell it right, when Chisda says that you wait for the market day, we're talking about when the market day is near. And when Rav Yehuda says you sell it right away, and you don't wait for the market day, that's when the market day is not so near. And of course, what's the definition of near or not near? So that the Gemara unfortunately doesn't help us with. All right, so Rav Kahana Havabidei Shikra the Rav Mesharshi. So it's a couple of stories that highlight the obligations towards people who are taking care of other people's things. So Rav Kahana had in his hand the beer of Rav Mesharshia Bar Chilkai Yasma. He had the beer of Rav Mesharshia when he was an orphan. Now, presumably he wasn't a Rav at that time, but he eventually became a Rav, and so they are calling him by his eventual name, but he presumably was a minor, and that's why Rav Kahana was taking care of it. What? He was just watching the beer. He was, presumably he was holding the beer for him. Meaning the point is that presumably he inherited the beer that was the brewery that was for being fermenting. No, not a single beer. No, a vat of beer, exactly. And of course you could be a trader in beer, and you bought a whole vat of beer that you're no. So Shahia Ad Rigla. So when he inherited it, so Rav Kahana did not sell it right away. Rather, he waited until the next holiday because he wanted Amar. Because what did he say? Because maybe there will be a little bit of spoilage. It'll be turned vinegar. So Maisi Zuzab Kharifa. But at the same time, I'll be able to sell all of the beer because everybody's going to want beer because it's the holiday. So as a result, you could see this balancing of desiring to sell as quickly as possible and thereby lock in the profits, and trying to protect the value of the asset and not selling too quickly. And now we have a second story that's similar. So Ravina Havabidei Chamra de Ravina Zuti Yasma. So again, Ravina had wine that belonged to Ravina Zuti, the little Ravina, I guess, and Bar Achte Hava, who was his nephew, right, the son of his sister, and Lididei Nami Chamra Hava, and he also had some beer of his own. So Kamasikla L'Sichra, he was going to bring his beer to Sichra to sell it. So Asala Kamei to Ravashi. So he went to ask Ravashi, and should I also take the beer of my nephew, the orphan? So Amar Lei, so Ravashi said to him, Maula Amtuye Bahadan. I'm sorry. Ravina said, "What's the law? Do I take it with me or do I not take it with me?" So Amar Le Ravashi said to him, "Zil, take it with you. Lo adaf mididach. Don't treat it better than your own wine, meaning than your own beer." So the point is that if in fact you are going to sell your own stuff, so then sell the stuff. And as Rashi points out, maybe you should worry that he's going to take it in transit, and there'll be some damage that happens in transit. Maybe the ship will sink or something like that. And so the answer is that if you're not worried about that concern for yourself, so we won't be worried about that concern for the
parlance. Treat other properties better than treat your property better than my property.
Well, don't treat your property better than my property. Right. Treat it equal. So now the next Mishnah is going to go back to a topic that we saw some time ago about discussing women who are not entitled to a ksuba. Tomorrow we will finish the 11th chapter of Ketubot. Ketubot has a total of what? Tomorrow morning is 9 o'clock is services, but we'll learn this an hour before Mincha, and that will be at approximately 4:55, something like that. Something like or 5, 4:55.
I think Ellie's going to be available.
Ellie's not available on Shabbos.
All
right. Well, we'll figure out. We'll find out, and worst comes to worst, I will try and cover if it's. I might be the substitute. Okay. Oh yes, that's going to be a very wonderful bar mitzvah.
Tomorrow?
All right. No, not in a couple of weeks. All right. So everybody should have a wonderful Shabbos, a good Shabbos, and we'll look forward to continuing our learning together. Give me 1 second, Lori, and then I'm happy to take your question.